Good morning, sir. Today's class we will majorly discuss about the topic of dominant caste. But before I go to talk about dominant caste, I would want to bring a small discussion about the concepts of great and little tradition. At some other point of time also I made a reference of it when I was speaking of Govardhan Giri Puja. I was talking to a friend of mine about you people. What I was trying to reflect on was the level of seriousness. Seriousness can be gauged from various things. One is whether you are actually finishing the task that is given to you on a daily basis. In fact, the discussion was about how Vindhyas forms a cultural barrier. How Vindhya mountains form a cultural barrier between the people out there and people here. The discussion actually came on the eve of the Independence Day. I feel that down south there is a lot of gap in the understanding of freedom and independence. Somebody was actually writing a big mail on topic of religion. I have to actually address that question in some other class. He was writing about geographical determinism. Who is that? Geographical determinism. हाँ sir. क्या नाम है? अविनाश. हाँ. अभिलाष. हाँ. I'll address all those questions, sir. It will take some time, but I'll come back on that. I think geography is one of the primary factors that determines culture. Culture includes everything, including religion. His question was something different. I will come on to that question also at a later point of time. But here I was thinking about this. The culture of studying for civil services is also very different for the people from up Vindhyas and down here. I have said this earlier also, but then today, because the talk had come, I wanted to once again caution you about this. Geographical proximity to UPSC, the building. Geographical proximity to the power center makes the regions above the Vindhyas feel more about UPSC, I guess. And I told this earlier that down here we are very strong with plan B. Most of the people opt for technical courses because if something goes wrong in UPSC, I have this. So your major focus is on plan B, not on plan A, that has to be UPSC. And we can't help it because we were brought up in such kind of a mindset that anything other than engineering and medicine is worthless. So if somebody was trying to study history or political science, they are less than human for us. They are not human at all. They are actually talking worthless things. And that is the problem. When it comes to UPSC, you will have to study all those worthless things that you did not perhaps study in the last 25 years of time. So it's like we are doing Aksharabhyas to you at 25 years. And what I wanted to finally say in this class is try to see to it that you put up more effort. Because for the people up there, I was thinking that maybe two major differences I can find. One is familiarity, closeness with UPSC. The purpose of UPSC, there is the primary purpose. The whole lot of Biharis and UP kind of people, they are born to be with UPSC only. That's where UPSC, the name actually matches with UP. They are there for UPSC only. The moment you are born, you are filling the application for the UPSC exam. Here, to know that there is something called UPSC, it takes 25 years of time. After 25th birthday, then you have nothing else to do. Then somebody advises that maybe this could be one of your optionals. I mean, one of the job opportunities, one of the careers there. And I really feel bad about it that, having the so-called intelligence to crack the exams, we don't have a heart to understand what is required for clearing the exam. I sometimes feel that having an exposure to problems is necessary to understand a problem. So you haven't seen maybe perhaps in a major way the gender discrimination. You haven't seen the ardent poverty, how it happens. You haven't seen how insecure people can be when they are just near to the borders. In fact, this geographical location makes you so very safe that you don't feel the urgency to work. A Chinese man cannot come directly to you with his rifle. Or even if he is going with a missile, it can't reach you. You are so very secure. In that security, when you are working, the 100% is not coming out. On top of it, you have all the luxurious kind of living and sumptuous kind of biryani, which makes you sleep immediately. So one is cutting down on your luxury. Secondly, feel the urgency because see, you cannot understand the problems of all this because you haven't experienced. So at least the way out can be read more about the problem, try to get into the problem. And this is what I wanted to communicate. And feel the independence, feel the freedom. Okay, because not many of our families, many of the people from our lineages were actually involved in the freedom fight. Neither we were involved with the freedom fight, nor we were the victims of it. So we don't value it. For us, the Independence Day may be hoisting of the national flag and doing a bit of march past here and there. And for many of us, that is also, I don't know how many of the people who are regular residents of Hyderabad, they do participate in such kind of, annual ceremonies. Jaisa ki wahan par, march past is going on, state ceremony is going on, some leader is actually addressing. We are not really bothered about who is addressing. We have to look at the national flag, and for that occasion we are there. I don't think so. Come 15th August and 26th January, you're jolly good enjoying your television back home and nothing more than that. This is our freedom actually. What we mean by Independence Day and Republic Day is we have a holiday, extra holiday. And nothing more than that. That is the problem down the Vindhyas. Maybe we will have to think on those lines, try working more, try to read so that you can have a presentable answer. Anyways, wo to ho gaya. Sir, I really loved many of your questions, Abhishek. Abhishek hi hai na? Abhilash, I'm so sorry. I liked all those questions. His primary question was, can any geography be instrumental in bringing a kind of religion? And there were so many other things he was speaking of. I have a lot of thinking to do before I actually answer your question, but then I feel that for any religion to emerge, there has to be a presence of injustice, there has to be presence of a pain. So wherever there is a presence of injustice, there is a pain, there is violence, then there will be God. If at all it is the man-made God. That was your first question actually. I'll follow with the later ones in some other class. Today's class we will be starting with the concepts of great and little tradition, but before that, have a look at them. God knows. The man on the right side. यहाँ पर जरा कंगी ठीक से नहीं हुई. He was left with more hair there. This was Oxford's book on Srinivas. If about somebody, you can write a full-length book. Autobiographies are different. We can write our own autobiographies. We can present whatever was there, whatever not there in our life. A pseudo-autobiography. But somebody is writing about you, meaning that they are really, and who is the other fellow, other person? Sir? This man. Many of us know his work very closely. He used to draw cartoons regularly for the Hindu also. K.R. Narayanana. R.K. Lakshman, who passed away a couple of years ago. So it shows that they must have shared a close relationship because they're sitting next to each other in the veranda of their house. For many of M.N. Srinivas' writings, R.K. Lakshman was actually giving the cartoons. So whenever there was some kind of a social situation on which a cartoon has to be made, it was a combined work by them. Each cartoon takes a lot of time to produce actually. For us it may be we would give a glance and flip the page. On that I remembered. In yesterday's newspaper, yesterday was 13th of August, there was a full page article in the Hindu on the Andaman Islanders. If at all you had, Leda. How many of us are regular with the newspaper? Can I see the hands? Not regularly buying, regularly reading. Some people are not. Kya hua? You don't do? I didn't expect that kind of a puzzled look on your face at least. So yesterday full page article was there on the Andaman Islanders, and today 14th of August you have at two places the mention of Rajgonds. On the regional page, page 4, we have one about Rajgonds, because 10th of August was the International Day of Indigenous Populations. From 2007 they started this particular day to be celebrated, commemorated, whatever. So on the 10th anniversary year of Indigenous Peoples' Rights Day, there has to be some question in your exam. It can be a very direct one, such as rights of indigenous populations in the Indian Constitution. Or they can pick up an international organization under UN where indigenous people's rights are actually the focal area. That can be one kind of a question. Or there can be much more basic, such as define indigenous populations and how their economic systems were affected because of the contemporary developments. Look at chapter 3, paper 1. Chapter 3, paper 1, towards the end of the chapter, globalization and impact on indigenous economic systems. Is it there? If at all from the syllabus he has to lift a topic, that should be the one. Otherwise there can be different varieties. Like how in the Indian Constitution indigenous people's rights are addressed. Or they can only ask you to define, and an attached question can be there. So in the 14th of August newspaper, you will find on one page, on page number 4, Hyderabad edition, there was some conference there from two perspectives. One was Indigenous People's Rights Day. On that occasion, they were applauding the works of, remembering the works of Heimendorf And then elsewhere also there is some information related to Rajgons alone. I think that was in the insertion there. In one of the insertions, say, dijiye ma'am, can I have? ये वाले पेज में मेट्रो प्लस पेज नंबर 4, Gonds and their indigenous music. So you can have a brief profile. I have asked you to visit Tribal Affairs, Ministry of Tribal Affairs website, library some time back. If at all you haven't done, do it, because once your course ends, you will not have time to do that. And I also asked you to get some leaflets from there so that your ethnographic profile can be. Actually, there used to be one journal called Sanskriti by AP Tribal Affairs Ministry. Of late, they have actually stopped publishing that journal, which is a monthly edition. But then the library has those old editions of Sanskriti. If at all you can find them, because that journal, that magazine is that used to address particular problems of PTGs, primitive tribal groups. So with proper case studies, you will be able to get, even if 1 or 2 editions are available, you can photo click and read later on. So these are the 2 people, and this is that book on Srinivas. There is one more book. This I had spoken of, Caste, the 20th Century Avatar. That was a compilation by M.N. Srinivas, which has so many articles there. One article towards the end of the book is the autobiographic article of M.N. Srinivas. He writes about his own life story there. He actually was explaining why is it that he had to chose India as his area of sociological, anthropological work. Why is it that he did not try to go to a distant island? And he was also trying to write about the role played by R.C. Brown in his own life. That article you will have to read, because as a young boy he was always having health issues, and because of which he couldn't go out and study. Even the research has to be done in his own village and the villages nearby. But then by doing all this, he was trying to redefine anthropology. I told you this definition in the very first classes. We said there that anthropology is a study of others. But with M.N. Srinivas, a new definition had come. Anthropology can also be a study of our own culture, studying our own selves. Something like an Atmajnana. Now, when somebody is writing about a culture with a very personal experience there, it looks to be original first hand. See, when the world anthropologists, they were choosing some distant island populations, cultural groups, and trying to do research from there, we used terminology such as primary source information, secondary, etc., etc. So we always said that primary source based information is very much important to write a genuine ethnography. Primary source is the one where the researcher is trying to get the information from the people first hand. Now here in this case, the writer itself is a primary source. So you actually know, being a person from that particular culture group, you know where you get the information, who is better equipped to get the information. I was remembering something. The other day, a Brahmin student was making this remark. I really loved that. He was saying this. And that question also, we were showing geographical expanse, and India was almost static there. It didn't move. I mean, Hinduism was strongly printed in that India map. So he was trying to give me the other side of the picture, like it is not simply that age area principle. It's not simply that. But he says maybe Hinduism is much more tolerant and much more violent free when compared to the other religions such as Islam and Christianity. The kind of violence, bloodshed that we see in the other religions, that is largely absent in Hinduism. Of course, Shaivites and Vaishnavites struggle was there for a brief time, but that is not so very violent that gives the red picture to Hinduism. Whereas Islam and Christianity, we see the sanctioning, acceptance of violence. The entire Old Testament in Christianity is filled with violence, filled with bloodshed. So during a large period of time when one religion is accepting violence, that's where, why people accept, why people question kind of discussions come. Maybe because this is largely a tolerant religion. Though we accept that Brahmins must have created the kind of unequal system, like, we are supreme, we are pure, kind of, even if I am accepting Brahminical origin theory of caste. Their imposing of the rules was with the help of the name of the god. We don't see elements such as ethnic cleansing, large scale elimination of people, say by Aryans. And that's where I am trying to address you, sir, also. The question towards the end that he was writing was, I don't remember the exact words, but I am trying to replicate. He was asking this, that why was it that Hindus, got into such a complicated caste system when compared to the simple religions of Islam and Christianity? Was it that, sir? You will have to understand that no religion is simple. And all the more so, Christianity and Islam. Though there is a principle such as egalitarianism that is considered to be primordial. Vinay, you're here with me? Yeah. Though the principle of egalitarianism is primordial in Islam and Christianity, that seems to be in practice largely absent. Because in both the cases we see the so-called Aryan kind of a feel there, Aryan, Jewish kind of a thing there. Large-scale elimination of people in the name of religion did not happen in the case of Hinduism. So everything said and done, how much ever detailing is there in the rituals, or how many ever variants are there in the Hindu religion, at the end of the day, when you are comparing with the rest of them, this religion seems to be much more simple and tolerant when compared to the other two religions. Okay, sir, you think on those lines. I still have to talk a complete lecture on this comparison. There were several things that I did not want to deal with, but because the questions had come, so I thought in one of the classes I will talk about all of them. I started this discussion with, I wanted to talk about Srinivas' contributions, but before that I said I have to talk about somebody else. Because when somebody else from outside is talking about India, that doesn't look to be a real one, unless otherwise you have stayed there for a long time. It's as simple as the Trobriand Islanders is being discussed without staying there, without interacting with them. See, had Malinowski not used the kind of techniques that he was using on the field, maybe perhaps we would not have been able to know so many details of the Trobriand populations. So staying there, trying to do a lot of research on their culture, on their history, etc., this is very important. Now, I would want you to look at one particular topic called the great and little traditions. Then I will come to the dominant caste and other concepts of Srinivas. My primary concern here is to create a high level of respect for Indian thinkers, Indian sociologists, Indian social anthropologists in the mind of the student when compared to some foreigner writing about our own territory. See, participation in the cultural life of people in order to understand the cultural group with which you are dealing with can be of different levels. I was in one of the classes talking about Khwasalid, you remember? I was in one of the classes talking about Khwasalid, the medical anthropologist, extreme level of participation there. And the one that was there in today's newspaper, Heimendorf, though he was a foreigner to Indian territory, he was here presenting tribal ethnographs, tribal studies with his very first-hand involvement with the people. He was not simply associated with the government, but he was staying there, studying them closely, learning their languages, writing in their languages, communicating with them, participating in all those kinds of rituals, etc. So understanding them from their perspective can be seen very closely in Heimendorf when compared to the other thinkers. So you cannot place Heimendorf and people like several American anthropologists, including somebody like Robert Redfield or several other thinkers. You cannot place them on the one single plane. My focus is on this particular person, Robert Redfield, the one who had given. So I am actually not going to give a dictation on great and little tradition for two reasons. One, I don't like the topic. Secondly, it is not scoring. It is not scoring. Thirdly, it doesn't feel good reading it also. I don't ask you to hate the topic, but it sometimes is so very unfortunate that UPSC gives big questions on this topic. As somebody was asking the other day, when about some concept, क्या था? Schmidt's scheme of diffusion. Somebody was asking, why is it that, though it is not really functional, why is it that UPSC is asking? It is all the mental structures of UPSC. So this question also. There was a time when 60 marker was asked. We would ask the students not to touch this question, unless otherwise it is for a short note. Now the times have changed, they are asking for shorter questions. Great and little tradition, the topic mentioned in your chapter 5. Along with great and little tradition, two other topics are there called parochialization and universalization. So I would want to first talk about them, primarily to show the insignificant contribution they have made to understand Indian society, and then show Srinivas as a big man. That is my objective. Because many times we do not value, we do not respect our own scholars and researchers compared to the outsiders. At least people like Srinivas, S.C. Roy, D.N. Majumdar, and then L.P. Vidyarthi, they should change our outlook towards how one can understand Indian society. So there is one contemporary anthropologist called Susan Anderson. I'll be sharing her essay on your Dropbox. Read that essay. She also had personally worked in India. She is giving certain other examples and her own ideas. I also want you to read that essay, Susan Anderson's essay. Yesterday also I have added a few things. है ना? एक वीडियो भी था and then कुछ और भी था. Colouring. Somebody had mailed me saying that वो हमने लिखा नहीं ठीक से पीछे बैठे थे, kind of a thing. Then I thought I would give that also. In fact, that is there in the Ember's book, colouring, very, very close, very, very detailed. But then, and sir, people who are sitting at the back, if you are not able to see what I am writing, kindly lift your hand. I will try to write in a legible handwriting instead of taking a lot of pain mentally, psychologically, physically. Ki, no, ma'am is not writing legible handwriting. Now, I am talking about these concepts of great little tradition, universalization, parochialization. Sir, whenever you are writing about a concept, you should tell us, you should present there the underlying theme in that concept, meaning the purpose of that concept. In fact, you know, these two terms, great and little tradition, were introduced by Robert Redfield in his study of Mexican society. When you are using a concept that was given in certain foreign territory, foreign not simply geographically, foreign in terms of culture also. When you are trying to use the same concept which you have used elsewhere in the world, you will have to see to what extent you will be able to accommodate, apply in this particular territory. He was trying to actually explain cultural diffusion between the urban, rural and folk societies. Redfield was trying to explain cultural diffusion between urban, rural and folk societies. The way he was see, our understanding of Mexican society is almost zero. Forget about Mexico, about our own society, our understanding is zero. We are now talking about what he has written about Mexican society. He was categorizing traditions in Mexican society into two. One is the great tradition, one is the little tradition. Tradition, as we have defined long time back, tradition is something that is handed over to us from the previous generations. All those practices, beliefs, etc., that are handed over from the ancestral generation to the predecessor, successive generations, this we call tradition. Traditions are categorized by Robert Redfield into great and little tradition. The name itself looks to be ethnocentric. Some traditions you are calling great, some you are calling little. It's like using the words primitive and evolved or primitive and civilized for the regular tribal societies. Now, when he is trying to categorize the traditions into great and little, I am trying to present some of the comparisons he gives. Great tradition, according to him, is an urban tradition that must have originated in the urban areas, that must have been associated with lettered populations, literate populations, that must have originated in the temples and educational institutions of urban centers. And being an urban tradition, this must have had larger acceptance, larger geographical following, larger geographical following. Some of the things there. So, and they seem to be more rational in outlook. And they have proper sources, meaning that literate sources are there, written sources are there from where you are getting the kind of beliefs that you have. So great traditions are those that must have emerged in the urban centers, among the lettered people, educated people, in the educational centers, temples of the urban centers, and then these are the ones that have a larger geographical acceptance, and they are considered to be more rational because they are very close to scienticism and other things. When it comes to little tradition, these are the rural and folk traditions that were produced by the unlettered people. Sources are not authentic. Sources are not authentic because mostly they spread with the word of mouth. Mostly they spread with the word of mouth, and then they have very little acceptance. They are far from being rational, or they are mostly superstitions. They are mostly superstitions. This looks actually very funny. Our beliefs are beliefs and their beliefs are superstitions. Generally it happens with. However superstitious our belief is, we value it more than the other's beliefs. One other thing I wanted to tell you in the beginning of the class about the seriousness of preparation is your regular attendance. If you are regularly absent to the class, God can also not help you. Certain concepts may be difficult to understand, certain are so very easy to understand. The difficult ones require more of your attention, more of your repeated reading. Just understand that nothing is easy in this exam. It's a very costly affair into which you are caught. Great and little. Now when it comes to Mexican society, urban are these the great traditions, rural and folk societies are little traditions, very less aerial coverage. And such a concept, I'll first try to give some more detail about what he was trying to explain in the Mexican society. Then I would come back to how they tried to extend it to India. So, if somebody is drawing a picture of this kind, it is to show that they are there in the same plane. But we find that in most of the books, when great and little tradition is explained, we see this picture. This was placed at a higher plane when compared to this. So maybe perhaps I will take this alone. The purpose of giving this concept is to see cultural diffusion, explain cultural diffusion. So there may be certain traits that are moving from great to little and vice versa. And Robert Redfield felt that there will be more of traits that would be moving from, there would be more of traditions, more of cultural aspects that would be flowing from great tradition to little tradition when compared to that from little to great. Meaning that there will be more of imitation from more evolved culture groups, from more well-off cultural groups to less evolved cultural groups. Okay, if at all there is an imitation, there would be more of imitation of the urban tradition when compared to the rural tradition. And it is not simply that. When something is flowing from great to little, you will find that in a distorted form when it is there in the little tradition. The form in which you will find in the great tradition, the same form you don't find in the little tradition. By the time you accept it, by the time you find that in the little tradition, its form must have changed, it got distorted. Meaning that its purity will be altered during the process of diffusion. These are some of the things that he mentions. Definitely there will be a flow from great to little and vice versa. More of it from more evolved, more urban societies to less evolved societies, less technologically well-off societies. Can you give an example? Something that flows from urban to rural, you don't find in the exact form. Something that flows from great to little tradition, you don't find it in the exact form. Here he is using the words urban rural, so the example I am asking is also urban rural. Clothing. नहीं, आप मुझे थोड़ा सा विस्तार में समझाइए. I mean, a simple word, when you say clothing or technology, how is it that it changes form? In what ways it changes form? Is it in the utility? Sir? थोड़ा सा और, with an example. Don't shy away. Come talk about whatever comes to your mind.
Some shirts here are machine made, ma'am.
Okay.
And they are getting tailored in the same way.
Okay.
So that's a bit altered. I mean, like the fashion they are trying to copy, but it's changed.
Okay, fashion you are trying to copy, but then you are.
It changed.
What kind of an impact you see because of that? Is it the quality impact? Or maybe that you are trying to adjust based on your own requirements?
Yeah, maybe adjust based on requirements.
Maybe the kind of cloth that you might be using there? Because the kind of work that you do out there may be different from the kind of job profile you are into. So the same kind of textures, same kind of designs you might be using, but और बताइए.
Nowadays celebration patterns are also changing. Like birthday parties, the anniversaries, they are also trying to celebrate as well.
Otherwise, they were actually busy with the birthdays of the gods itself, like Lord Krishna's birthday or.
Changing the language. They are trying to imitate the foreign language, importing the foreign language like English or something. The words get distorted in the English.
Okay, maybe you can do that brainstorming on this. What could be the characteristics that, if at all you were a person from rural areas, you would be in a better position to understand what is it that we are copying from there. And what can be the vice versa? If at all we say that something something is getting diffused from rural to urban, what is it that is getting diffused? Food habits, such as?
Like eating oats and all those things. Like they used to.
I am talking about the other way around.
Yeah, like in villages.
Okay.
Coarse grains.
Okay, coarse grains, fine. Or I think we have come of age when eating for fashion is already showing the impact on the bodies and health. So something like the back to basics concept, as our friend says. There was one point of time when eating the subs and burgers and things like that was an aspect of fashion and modernity. Then we are now trying to go back to almost eating nothing from this kind of a source. Or maybe it is now a fashion to say that I am on a diet. Now a fashion to say that I am eating the raw vegetables kind of things. This, when we are applying to the Indian society in the urban and rural, it looks to be, the kind of discussion that we were having here, it looks to be of an insignificant one in terms of concepts, in terms of high sounding things. What happened to this concept in India was great and little tradition was extended to India by two people called Milton Singer and McKim Marriott. Milton Singer and McKim Marriott. M, C small, K capital, there is no gap there. Milton Singer and McKim Marriott. So all these are American anthropologists. Around 1950s this work was going on. They tried to apply the concept of great little tradition to India. And now they were dubbing Hinduism as a great tradition and rural religions as little tradition. Rural, folk and local religions as little tradition. I repeat what I said. This is something you will have to focus at. At the outset you will find a flaw in it. They are calling Hinduism as great tradition. So you can remember all those that I have written. If they are saying Hinduism as a great tradition, the one that has urban origins, that has origins in the lettered populations, the books were written in the urban centers, in the libraries, in the educational centers and temples. And that was the one that has the larger aerial coverage. When compared to something they say, the folk traditions, rural traditions as little traditions, local gods, these are the ones that have to do with unlettered populations, local aerial extent, etc. But in the first place, if at all we are looking at the factual element in the great tradition of Hinduism, we do not agree with whatever is written there. It was not the one that must have originated in the urban centers. We know that the Hinduism had originated long before writing had actually come into existence. That's where we see the two words, Shruti and Smriti. A lot of things that were not in the lettered form later got encoded in a written form. And it is not that Vedavyasa was sitting in a temple in the urban area of Dwarika or somewhere in Hastinapur and he was writing. It was never that way. Many of the books were actually written in the jungles. That kind of an isolation is very much important, sir. In order to excel in education, in order to excel in writing, mental peace, isolation is very much important. That's where I am actually puzzled with somebody when they say that they are doing a combined study. What is it that you are studying together? Each other? Don't know. Whether it is, see, Hinduism is a combination of several scriptures. Vedas is only a part of it. There are Aranyakas, there are Brahmanas, there are epics, Upanishads. Huge amount of literature is there that comes into about 50 and 60 simply if you are writing superficial list of them. The ones that must have been written systematically in an urban center, See, when somebody is doing that under the auspices of some ruler, that is trying to bring together what was already written. So you are trying to bring it into a proper form. It was not that you were generating all those writings, because some ruler had asked you to do that. That's a rarity. Now you will have to match with the historicity and also see to what extent an external concept can be useful in explaining what must have happened in our own territory. But then this kind of usage of great and little tradition became a part of the discipline in order to compare some of the great tradition gods with the little tradition gods. See, I am already using these words. Though we don't find it authentic to have such kind of a comparison, because Hinduism, or as a friend says, Vedic religion or whatever, that must not have originated in certain urban centers alone. Like, national capitals peoples or state capitals people are choosing and saying that, see, मैं इधर बैठ के ये book लिखूंगा, तुम उधर बैठ के वो book लिखना, बाद में ये पूरा कुछ, it will become a part of the great tradition. It was not happening that way. And not all these ideas were from the lettered population alone. So we have such a huge past coming from the pre-written times. Even in the writing times, it was so very scattered. And over a period of time, also maybe because of the technology, we are able to have access to all these Vedic and other scriptures. But suppose you are applying it to India, these words we are now using liberally, great and little tradition gods. It is also in line with what they tried to do here, make him Marriott and Singer. They were classifying gods like Brahma, Durga and all these mainstream heroes and heroines as the great tradition gods. Somebody like Maisamma or all these gods, Sammaka, all these fellows, these are the small time gods or Poturaju kind of people. These are all little tradition gods. Meaning those are the folk variants of the great tradition gods. I understand it in a different way. All these, the great tradition heroes, they are there at the top. The kind of hierarchy that we see in the human society, we see the same hierarchy in the gods also. Those are the supreme fellows. They have appointed their own representatives. At the very ground level, at the Gram Panchayat level, there is a Gram Devata. This is the first petition taker. Based on the ability of the local god or goddess, the issue can be handled. But if you feel that the local god and goddess is not able to take care of things, you slightly move up your recommendation. So these are the local variants of the supreme god. So you can see the functions also. See, Durga is the big time god. A very local variant is the Gram Devata, whose temple generally occurs at the entry of the village. So you can see the functions of Durga, functions of the local goddess. She is actually dealing with the entire universe. Any big demon that has emerged has to be killed by her. So her job profile is very high sounding when compared to the profile of this lady. So it is like she is guarding the entry, Gadwala Samsthanam, she is guarding. So her power ends with the entry gate. The moment you step out, she is powerless. In order to take care, maybe she will have to use all her influence in the neighboring areas to communicate to the other goddesses in the neighboring areas and then try to see to it, this is our fellow, protect him, protect her kind of a thing. So otherwise, she is a very local variant. This is the way the whole thing functions actually. But then the way Makim, Marriott and Singer explain this is in a different way. See, they use two words. One is called universalization, parochialization, universalization and parochialization. Universalization is the traditions of the practices, the traditions of little tradition are transmitted upward and becoming a part of the great tradition. Parochialization is the downward movement of traditions and cultural elements from great to little, and whenever this happens, you find those cultural aspects in a distorted form. Sir, when we were doing diffusion topic in anthropological thought, we said that one XYZ thinker made it necessary to know the source of origin of that culture trait in order to establish, confirm diffusion. Meaning that, if at all I am saying that Buddhism had spread from India to say Nepal and other areas, I'll have to confirm where Buddhism has originated, the place, the time, etc. If at all I am not able to confirm the origin of Buddhism in our territory, I will not be in a position to confirm that, see, here we have started, no doubt, but somehow we failed to retain. You fellows are still having. Just because they have a larger population, larger geographical coverage under that particular faith, they have a possibility of saying that, see, we are having this much of wealth of this religion, and hence maybe we are the originators of it. You find it in very little amount, maybe because of the cultural spread from us to you. Are you following? So that's where he was telling us in the German-Austrian school, you will have to confirm the place of origin and the place to which the cultural traits must have diffused. Now, in this case also the same thing is to be understood in order to prove that whether it is a universalization or parochialization, you will have to establish clearly what is the place of origin. Are you getting me? Are you getting me? So far it is fine. Though we don't take them wrong when they say that Hinduism is a great tradition and then your local gods are there, those are little tradition, we do accept all that, though there are some kind of aberrations. But when you are trying to explain things with examples, they have done the remaining damage to their own theory, to their own concepts. One of the examples I have shown you was Govardhan Giri Puja. They call Govardhan Puja as a great tradition element and Kaudang worship as the little tradition element. Are you following what I am saying? Huh? Tomorrow is his birthday. Today, huh? We are celebrating tomorrow. I think 2 days we do. Every festival in Hinduism we celebrate 2 days, as if one holiday is not enough. That was one example given by them. Govardhan Giri is a great tradition practice and then Kaudang is a little tradition practice. You remember that story?
Yes.
No. In the travel of those long 40 kilometers of distance, this has changed from Govardhan Giri to Govardhan Puja. एक तो example वो था. I'll give you a couple of other examples they have used. One popular one was Saloni festival. Saloni ante cinema actor kaadu. Saloni festival. This is a variant of Rakhi, practiced in Kishangarh. This is one more problem with them. Entire Indian culture originated in Kishangarh only. So this was like a pan-Egyptian theory, pan-Kishangarh theory. The story goes like this. There was a time, don't know when, there was a time when landlords and the landless laborers and workers with them and small-time farmers, they had a kind of relationship where the zamindar was having that paternalistic orientation. So yearly once they used to celebrate, that festival is still there, Saloni festival. Yearly once all those landless laborers and other small-time farmers, they would come, pay respects to the landlord, tie a thread to his wrist and ask him to protect them. Protect from whom? That is the other question. Maybe protecting from the landlord himself. We are tying this thread as, to remind you that we are at your mercy rather. Now what they say is, Marriott and Singer, this practice of the laborer tying a thread to the landlord was later transformed into a brother and sister indulging in the similar kind of an act. The stages, the steps are not explained. And who is at the mercy of whom is also not explained. In fact, these days, we'll have to see the origin of Rakhi, how, when, where, who. Yama and Amy, very Amy, and Krishna and his sister. Krishna and his sister. What is the demand of the sister? Why is it that she should ask for protection? What was the event before it? Anything else? एक तो यम लीला हो गया, एक तो कृष्ण लीला हो गया, and what are the other reasons for celebrating Rakhi? क्या था? माँ? वो तो ठीक है. Every relationship has economics behind it. We'll have to talk about one economics relation in today's class at a later part of. और बताइए sir quickly. What are the other stories that are described for the emergence of this festival of Rakhi? ये तो यम लीला and कृष्ण लीला, these are mythological. Anything from the historical times. I'll concentrate on the madam. कब? हाँ. Okay. So it's not simply all Indians are brothers and sisters, but Muslims and Hindus are also brothers and sisters. So we will have to. Somebody was saying something.
Society was largely patriarchal and we had the custom of child marriage. So sister had to be protected from it.
బాగా ఎమోషనల్గా ఆలోచించినట్టున్నారు. Any other historical event? Any other historical event? Most of the time this example is actually shown, this story is referred to a historical event, a real time provable event. जी सर. हाँ, रानी ऑफ मेवार. और कुछ थोड़ा सा और पीछे. The very popular story of Alexander and wife of Porus. That was actually the one where the tying of the thread in the modern times is actually reported. Alexander comes, he conquers, and Porus' wife sends him a letter and a thread from her own garment, saying అవునా అన్నట్టుగా పజల్డ్గా వావ్ అన్నట్టుగా చూడొద్దు. But then this shows to be one of the practices where she says that, see, I consider you as my brother, take this as, you know, in respect of this relationship, save my husband. Then with that one small silk thread he says, okay, I leave the entire kingdom to your husband and I'm leaving. That story gels well because his soldiers were already tired and dying and resenting. And this is shown as, see, the lady has asked me to leave, I am leaving in respect of her. Maybe that shows the kind of respect a foreigner shows to Indian lady when compared to our own people. We'll also in one of our classes examine how is it that India was always receiving people and we didn't go out elsewhere. Every time we see people walking into India, but we didn't find such an event until the modern times when we were enslaved and transported. We will also be examining that particular event, and I'll link there with religion. We ourselves have no clarity about why we celebrate one festival. Similar is the case with Diwali also. N number of stories are there. Rama came, somebody left, and all those stories. And if Rama and Sita are at the centrality of Deepavali, why is it that Lakshmi has to be worshipped on Deepavali? We are not worshipping Rama and Sita, but we are worshipping Lakshmi, but the story is about those two. Or maybe some expeditious people also say that maybe when the Rama is coming along with the family to back home, it's like Lakshmi coming back. And hence you are worshipping Lakshmi. Sir, there are several such stories where we ourselves do not have a clarity. So we can't blame it on a foreigner also. This was one of the examples given Saluno festival. There is one other festival he names called Navratha Devi festival. Navratha Devi, 9 nights. Navratha in the mainstream society becomes Dashera or Dashara. So it is like, based on the whims and fancies of the writer, he is calling some as a great tradition, gods and festivals, some as little tradition, festivals and rituals. There is a high lack of historical evidence there. Maybe the mythological understanding is very little. That is the reason why we generally do not subscribe to these kind of ideas. We don't accept them, give them so much of an importance, though we are using those terms for our convenience elsewhere. That's how when we are using the term great tradition in today's times. Sir, there is one book, I must have named it in our earlier classes, a book called Modernization of Indian Tradition. That we call level 3 book. Modernization of Indian Tradition, written by Yoginder Singh. We generally use this book to talk about Buddhism and impact of Jainism on Indian society. Modernization of Indian Tradition by Yoginder Singh seems to be the follow-up editions of M.N. Srinivas books. He was trained under M.N. Srinivas, then he was extending the tradition of Srinivas by trying to explain the Indian society in contemporary times, a living fellow. In that book we see that he uses the word great tradition to refer to all the mainstream religions, that is Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, Jainism, etc. and Islam also. These are all mainstream religions vis-a-vis little tradition or the tribal religions. So this kind of writing seems to be diluted there. We are using the same words but in a different meaning. We are using the terms to explain those religions that are mostly followed, that is by majority of the population, where we see a larger areal coverage is there, when compared to the tribal gods, whose coverage is very little. They definitely are showing the exchange of ideas from more evolved urban societies to rural and vice versa, but we don't see much of explanations regarding the more dreadful topics, more worthwhile topics, more conceptual topics in Hinduism and Indian society, such as why a caste, why varna, why certain other things, kind of things. So you may be contributing to understanding of Indian society, but not very comprehensively. That is the summary of these topics. Sir, if at all the question of great little tradition is given, you will have to by default write parochialization, universalization, and if parochialization, universalization is there, you will have to write about great and little tradition. But you are choosing this question only for a short answer, not for a 25 or 30 marker. In a small write-up, in a small PPT that I will share with you, I will be giving certain vital facts, which books, which year they have written, etc. Story remains this one. Now, let me come to M.N. Srinivas. So, they are actually like Srinivas is fighting the real battle at Panipat, whereas Singer, these are all people who are playing skits. It's as simple as it is. Now, I'll come to a brief profile of this man. See, if a question such as contributions of M.N. Srinivas to Indian anthropology is given, it has to start with a huge respect, adoration towards this man. No wonder if you use this, no wonder if you use superlatives also, because they deserve it. So you can start by using terms such as, this is a person who tried to redefine anthropology as a discipline to understand one's own society. He was the one who tried to give concepts to explain traditional Indian society and how those traditional concepts are functional in today's times. So it's like already there are some existing practices and beliefs. Those existing practices, beliefs and concepts, he is trying to use particular words to explain them. There are three very popular concepts by him. One is called dominant caste, the other is Sanskritization, the third one is westernization. When he is giving these concepts, the underlying theme is to understand social change and mobility in Indian society. His focus is to study social change and mobility in Indian society. So even when he was explaining Varna and caste, his basis was that. He was trying to explain social change and mobility. When I am saying that mobility can be upward or downward mobility or horizontal mobility. So when I am using these words upward and downward mobility, it means that maybe there are some kind of layers there, some kind of strata there, in which people and groups are moving up and down. By using this kind of an explanation, I am trying to communicate that M.N. Srinivas was trying to explain the social structures that were existing and how they were working. So once again, redefining his nature of work, his focus of work, he was trying to not simply study the mobility and social change. He was trying to bring to us what are the social structures that were existing and how these social structures are actually working, functioning and how the structure is changing and function is changing. I say it again, sir, be very close to what I am saying. My final intention here to project M.N. Srinivas as a structural functionalist and somebody who tried to study social change. I already told you at the time of caste that he was not preferring to establish the origins of any socio-cultural concept. So he was not an evolutionist as the 19th century evolutionists. But definitely he was trying to study the process of a change. He was trying to study the process of change. In that sense, he is an evolutionist. He was trying to see how a caste system must have been changing, Varna must have been changing, how any other thing was changing. So social change, social mobility was an underlying theme. He was trying to address the structures of Indian society and how they were functioning, how the structure itself was getting altered, and due to which how the functionality of it was changing. And when this is happening, what are the factors that are bringing change in it? If there is one kind of a social structure existing, what are the things that are influencing this social structure? Are these influences from internal mechanisms or from external mechanisms? Are you with me, sir? Are you with me? Please be with me. గొంతు చించుకొని గుండెలు అవిసేలాగా చెప్తా ఉంటే మీరు కమ్మగా పడుకోవద్దు. ఇదేదో బాలకృష్ణ సినిమా కాదు కమ్మగా. Though I love to be one. Did you understand what I said? ఏదో చెప్పారు. You understood what I said? The underlying theme of Srinivas' writings. I actually love to have a question like compare the foreign anthropologists and Indian anthropologists in presenting an understanding of Indian society. But I don't think that will be. And God forbid it comes for you, you can love answering such questions. I get the teasing, violent satisfaction when such questions are framed. I smile to myself when I write such a question. That was the same reaction when I had when I was writing this disappearance of useful arts. So I was actually imagining the kind of feeling that a student must be getting while writing this answer. Because after all, you can remember at that time only W.H.R. Rivers article and nothing more than that. Pen doesn't move ahead from there. It looks to be very familiar, but you can't write any there. I'll start with this. One more superlative about Srinivas, though I have said this earlier. So far, one major issue I said, he was somebody redefining anthropology. Secondly, he was trying to give concepts to explain traditional Indian society, its structure, function, and change, diffusion, etc. The last sentence that I said, when the structure was changing, because of what the structure was changing, is it because of the internal factors or external factors? Look at your syllabus, chapter 5, paper 1, paper 2. It is. Indigenous and exogenous processes of socio-cultural changes in Indian society. Indigenous and exogenous processes of socio-cultural changes in Indian society. There is a list given: Sanskritization, Westernization, and modernization. The word indigenous and exogenous, in one of the examinations, UPSC has picked this up. Explain the indigenous and exogenous processes of bringing social change in India. And those three words are there: Sanskritization, modernization, and Westernization. Generally, people try to categorize these three words into indigenous and exogenous. The first time reader would place Sanskritization in indigenous, westernization, modernization in exogenous. Indigenous, the one that is coming from internal factors, exogenous from external elements. So we try to write westernization, modernization as this changes from outside, Sanskritization as the one from inside. But at a later point of time, there will be another question. Comment on the interplay of Sanskritization and westernization in bringing social change in India, in explaining social change in India. We will be concluding there that though Sanskritization is an internal factor, that was influenced, Sanskritization itself was influenced, facilitated by westernization. So Sanskritization cannot be totally placed in indigenous element. Westernization cannot be totally placed in exogenous element. I hope you are following what I am saying, sir. Because these are on the lighter side, I might be going slightly quicker when compared to your anthropological thought or archaeology. Because we grew up seeing all this. So I was saying that Srinivas was churning out so many concepts. One strong personality trait I would want to reiterate about him. He was not simply trying to make us understand our own society. He was positive towards the criticisms leveled against him. In response to the criticisms, he was giving newer concepts with a final objective that I should make people understand Indian society. Is that clear to you? That's how it is. Each concept is linked to the previous one. It's as simple as reading Amartya Sen's literature. Any book that you have read from him? Any book of Sen? Book name gaadu, pustakam chadivara ani. Argumentative. But generally what I find with him is, you cannot understand the latest book if you haven't read the previous books. And this is one series of books I strongly recommend to the students going for UPSC exam. Start from one of his earliest books, like Poverty and Famines. From there you slowly, because Poverty and Famines is a much more simpler one. So it's like whenever he's writing the next books, he's quoting the previous one. You don't know what was happening there, but you are trying to read this one. It's like many of the center page articles in the Hindu, where he is writing about one in the present one. So something that he must have written 6 months ago, he is trying to quote, kind of things. So don't find it laborious, but occasionally you try to pick up such kind of books. Of course not now, maybe after your main exam when you have hell a lot of time, don't know what to do with that time, then you can pick up. Then you can do textbook reading of anthropology also. Now anyway you will not do. Till your main exam you won't do. After your main exam you can do the textbook reading. Now coming back here, I am starting with the concept of dominant caste. Though Sanskritization was given a little earlier to dominant caste, the concept of Sanskritization was given by him a little earlier to dominant caste. Can you pick up a piece of paper, write down, recall the 4 recommended definitions we have given of caste? The 4 recommended definitions of caste. Bailey, McIver, Green, and Risley, followed by Ghurian. If somebody has finished, please tell me. Don't consider anthropology class as a harikatha. Read out,
First one, Bayes.
please.
It is closed, organic, and stratified.
Okay, closed, organic, and stratified entity. Somebody else from the back. The next definition, MacIver. If somebody has written, please read out from what you have written. రాసారా రాయరా ఇష్టం లేదా ఓకే చెప్పండి ప్లీజ్ ఈవెన్ ఇఫ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ హాఫ్ ట్రూ ఫైన్ వీ డోంట్ మైండ్
Ma'am, I don't remember his name, but he said
Please.
Caste is nothing but a group of people or family who stay for a long period of time, they become a caste. He said. Second one.
ప్లీజ్
When the status is predetermined, then men born in the caste without any hope of changing it.
men are born into a class
Without any hope of changing it, then such classes will transform into caste.
Okay. MacIver's definition based on how achievement is substituted by ascriptive nature. Men are born into the classes so that one cannot change one's own class, then class takes the form of a caste. Green's definition, sir. Green's definition. Chepandi, please, louder.
It is a form of social stratification in order where the movement up and down in the caste system is not ideally not.
Okay. It's a stratified entity where up and downward movement, at least ideally, does not occur. And Risley's definition. Risley. Risley. Risley.
Contact between two races is the result of.
Now, we are not talking about racial origin theory here. That's anyway there. But we are asking about the definition of caste.
Collection of families or a group of families having a or bearing a common name, a common ancestral name, having a common occupation.
Group of families. Families are group of families who have a common name, common occupation, and common ancestry. Mm-hmm.
Tracing their common ancestors to the many mythical.
Okay. Having a common ancestor. So occupation is same. They have the same name. They have a common ancestor who can be a mythical or real. And can you list out the Ghurye's 6 features of caste? Ghurye's 6 features of caste. Segmental division, hierarchy, commensality and social intercourse restrictions, exogamy, civil and religious disabilities, unrestricted choice of occupation, then restrictions of marriage. Sir, I recommend you to memorize in the same order so that you won't have a confusion. Those are the basic definitions of caste. Srinivas is not defining caste. He doesn't take that risk. Several people have already done. So it's like reinvention doesn't attract him. Considering several of these definitions and accepting Ghurye's list as well, he tries to propose this concept of dominant caste. So by now we understand that caste has a lot of rituality associated with it in the form of purity and pollution. Caste hierarchy must have come from hierarchy in occupation. The purer occupations might be having a higher ritual status and hence they are higher in the hierarchy compared to impure impure occupations, dominant caste. That is the book in which he talks about the concept. That is the book. In the dominant caste in Rampura, 1959. Years are very, very important, sir. One, to know in what sequence he was giving the concepts. Secondly, when that particular concept is given, what must have been the social conditions? See, in the same time period, two different thinkers might be doing two different works, though they are there from the same discipline. First you finish writing, then I will tell. A caste will become dominant if a combination of these traits are present, a combination of those traits. Land ownership, place in the local caste hierarchy, meaning respectable place in the local caste hierarchy, ritual hierarchy, numerical supremacy, political clout, access to Western education, jobs in the administration. So initially he was giving the four. Later he added this. Can I talk? I was saying that though you are from the same discipline, different thinkers might be doing two different things, though you are working at the same time period. I am trying to compare M.N. Srinivas with somebody else called Dubey. So from now on many occasions we are going to encounter S.C. Dubey. His wife was also an anthropologist, Leela Dubey. Question had come last year. Polygyny and Islam. That was the question that was asked in the light of her works. So we have seen earlier, D.N. Majumdar's wife is also an anthropologist, Veena Majumdar, Leela Dubey, several others. So we can have a compilation towards the end of our course, all the female anthropologists and wives of anthropologists. So it's like Civil Servants Wives Association, Anthropologists Wives Association. They also eventually become anthropologists. Now here, when Srinivas was doing this job of trying to explain Indian society, Dubey was active in some other activities there. One very significant activity he was involved in was community development program, CDP. 1950s we have launched community development program. So he was trying to devise methodologies to execute community development programs. That was also a time, 1950s was also a time Government of India had started with family planning program and a Grow More program, Grow More, that is related to food. My father used to say this, when these two programs were going on together, they were school-going children. So he was saying he was 7, 8 years old. When in the villages, government used to publicize these things, Grow More campaign and family planning program. Both of them, they used to picturize one beside the other. So my father used to say, maybe people were getting confused. What to grow more? So instead of one, they must have chosen the other one. Agrarian revolution and hum do hamare do kind of a thing. Dubé was involved in drawing methodologies to popularize, to spread the idea of family planning. His work was centered around what are the techniques, or what are the family planning techniques that were actually being accepted by certain cultural groups, rejected by a few. She was going into the details. It was not simply a religion-wise categorization of the techniques. So you will have to identify what technique works well, where. And regionally also. This was one he was working on. Dubé was also known for something else. He was a good critic. Give any theory, any concept, he will criticize. There was something like a competition between Srinivas and Dubé. Most of the concepts Srinivas gave, Dubé countered them. But that anyway eventually turned out to be positive for Srinivas himself. So once he gave dominant caste concept, Dubé was ready with his criticism. We will see what kind of criticisms. So Dubé's work was one with the community development program. The other one was there where he was trying to work in the population control program, family planning program. Dubé was also presenting anthropology from a historical perspective. You will have to understand here that background of the people definitely has a say on what they are doing. When it comes to Srinivas, he was a sociologist. Having come from the sociology background, the kind of explanations are more suitable for social anthropology. Somehow he was got into the sphere of social anthropology, then he became a professor of this, etc., etc. When it comes to Dubé, Dubé was originally from political science discipline. So most of his writings deal with the political structures of village India. And in describing the political structures also, his affinity to historical writings and historical study was very much significant there. So we can see that he was writing from an evolutionary perspective also. We will see in one of our future lectures, say in the chapter 4, where we are going to study, look at chapter 4, paper 2. In chapter 4, paper 2, it majorly deals with evolution of anthropology in India. Several thinkers have come to organize the emergence of anthropology in India in particular phases. That itself became a sub-discipline studying evolution of anthropology in India. So one other aspect which Dubé was involved with was trying to write the stages of emergence of Indian anthropology. This same work was done by Majumdar also and Vidyarthi also. That's altogether a different stream of things. Now coming back here, Srinivas says that these are some of the characteristics which make a caste, which can make a caste a dominant one. They may be in different proportions. But in order to be a dominant caste for him, initially he was very clear that the caste must have a reasonable higher ritual status. It means very clearly that an untouchable cannot be a dominant caste. A very lowly caste cannot be a dominant caste. But of course, later when he was modifying his own idea on Sanskritization, he tried to also accommodate a Sudra model. Though initially he says that Sudra cannot be a Sanskritic model. Later he understood, with the way governmental policies were being implemented, with the way in certain regions lower castes were also becoming dominant, there he said that every time ritual status alone is not significant. Sometimes even the low caste can be dominant. Sir, there is one other person called Louis Dumont, D-U-M-O-N-T. L-U-I-S, Louis Dumont. Dumont was also somebody who examined the concept of dominant caste. He writes very clearly that more than anything else, economics influences a caste hierarchy. Economic influences the position of a caste. So he undervalues the ritual importance. So this was one of the questions a couple of years ago. Present Louis Dumont's ideas on caste hierarchy, explanations of caste. That was actually a comparison of Srinivas and Louis Dumont. See, after all, economics is very, very important. Without money, nothing happens in contemporary world. That's why back home you are going to study from AN03 the topic of marriage payments. Complete the topic of marriage payments, AN03. I wanted you to study this also because in today's newspaper when Rajgond's interview was there, he was making a mention in Rajgond's, it is not the dowry that is prevailing, it is the bride price. And he also makes it a point there that it doesn't mean that we sell the girls. Just because a monetary exchange is there, it is not that you are paying, you are buying. It may be something like a compensation that we are giving to the family that is losing a member, economically contributing member. But every relationship, the relationship between any culture group, any strata today, looks to be more from the economic perspective. So Louis Dumont says, more than the ritual purity, economics and land holding, these are the factors that make a caste superior. By extending this, he says, I have written 3 circles there. Innermost circle is village level dominance, second one is regional, third is national level. For Srinivas, when one moves from a village level to the national level, the dominance of a caste gives way to the dominance of a religion. There are 3 circles there. Innermost is the village level dominance, followed by the regional dominance, and then national level dominance. Let me say it in certain other words. Once he says that these are the characteristics of a dominant caste, meaning these conditions have to be fulfilled for a caste to become dominant. He says that caste is a more regional affair. Caste is a more regional affair, meaning that the hierarchy of caste varies from one village to village, one region to region. I hope you are following what I am saying. Which caste is dominant changes from village to village, from region to region. You can actually think of your own regions. Though Srinivas is writing from a South Indian village, it is comparable with the writings of D.N. Majumdar from villages of Punjab. Both of them were trying to bring out this phenomena. That caste dominance is a reality. But which caste dominates is a regional affair. N number of examples can be had. Can I go from here? This one? अंकित कोई है क्या क्लास में? अंकित या आदर्श? अंकित और आदर्श. If somebody is there with that name, meet me after the class. जल्दी कीजिए. Can I go? Okay, as you are writing, I will also say this before I give the examples of dominant caste. So generally, sir, whenever a concept is given, you will have to write who has given, in which book, which year, what is the purpose of that concept, explain the concept with the examples as given by the thinker himself. Then you write a criticism, what happened after criticism, you will close on that. Don't forget that how much ever less significant the concept is in explaining Indian society, you will have to always end on a positive and functional note. That is what is the structure of these answers. So in the process, some list of regional studies or case studies we will be mentioning to you. Those you will have to give. Let me finish off this sentence. He was saying that there is a regional variation or village level variation. One caste that may be dominant in one village need not be a dominant one in the other villages. There can be certain villages where Brahmin is a dominant caste, certain others may be there where other land owning castes may be dominant. But we are going to, when we write down the examples, we will see one of the references by K.L. Sharma when he says that in particular villages that he had studied, Brahmins are dominant not because they are ritually pure, but because they have a higher land holding. So you will have to understand this. Even in order to serve the gods, you should have the economic wealth. And one interesting remark he makes, maybe I will finish off with that remark and go forth. As one moves from village level to the national level, the dominance of a caste is substituted by dominance of a religion. At the national level, it is not caste that matters, it is the religion that has a dominance. So it is like caste is a village level affair, regional affair. Sometimes it may so happen that in the state where you live, the caste that is dominating at the state level need not be a dominating one in your own village. And see, in the contemporary writings we see, like Susan Anderson's essay that I am going to share with you, she talks about the differences in the poverty levels of the states where a purer caste is dominant. That means a high caste is dominant when compared to certain regions and states where low castes are dominant. So two things I want to say here. One, the comment of this person, M.N. Srinivas. Second one is Anderson's comment. I'll look at the first one now. As you are moving from a village level to a regional level to a national level, caste is no more dominant, it is the religion. And he says that at the village level, maybe one particular caste is dominant, but the region in which the village is actually situated, the region might have a different caste domination. And finally, when you come to the national level, caste doesn't matter, but it is religion that matters. See, in a majority Hindu religion based country, by default, religion matters rather than caste when it comes to the national level politics. This one he had seen, he was suggesting, based on whatever the developments that were going on at that point of time in the country, at the national level, what might matter is the religion, not the caste. But when NDA government was there was one major study conducted where we had seen that this was Andrew Bettelet's study. Andrew Bettelet, the name we had come earlier? Bettelet? No. What Bettelet was saying was, the Srinivas comment might be valid for that point of time where nationalism was at the helm of affairs and the so-called larger Hindu dominance was actually seen. But when he was writing in the NDA regime, even at the national level, according to him, caste has an equal importance. And he was trying to present statistics of the MPs, ministers, etc., where there was a Brahmanical dominance. Several articles were written suggesting that maybe this was not an engineered development, it might be only an accident, a coincidence. That several Brahmin MPs were there, several ministers were there from Brahmins. But one cannot actually brush aside this vital statistics where we see that members from Brahmanical community were predominantly there in the ministries and in the parliament. So it all depends on whom you are fielding in the election there. So it is suggestive enough that even at the national level, based on which political party is in power, the kind of caste might get a representation. When I am saying all this, this is a subject matter we are speaking, not a casual chit-chat across a tea. These are the things that you will properly present in your answer also.
What was the name of the book?
There is the second one. This was the idea of Susan Anderson. What she says is, the poverty levels in different regions and states are based on who is dominant and how the demography is, caste demography is. See, there can be regions where a high caste is dominant and there can be low caste dominant states. We already have concluded here that in order to be a dominant one, you need not necessarily be somebody on a purer side alone. There are combinations of them there. If you see the list of the characteristics that he was writing, this I am writing as the Srinivas was trying to present in that order. For him, land ownership is number one, because in spite of the fact that we are shifting into industrial occupations, still agricultural land holding is considered to be a vital one in order to prove your dominance. How much ever less fertile the land is, the amount of land finally matters. I can actually recall those times when Hyderabad was expanding. The regions that are considered to be of very low value in the real estate, people were actually not venturing into them. Suddenly they became important. And the people who were living in the tandas there, these were all tribal inhabited regions. Certain hills outside and then certain plains. Suddenly they became super rich. Land prices shot up so heavily. I remember at one point of time newspaper coverage was there where we see that the tribal landholder there, they used to sell off the lands which were otherwise infertile and otherwise insignificant for people. Suddenly they got the money, and with such a huge money they didn't have palatious houses to live. So for a few months they didn't even mind staying in the high-end cars, keeping the gunny bags full of cash there. And there were also reports where such people were starting software companies, and people were working at 20,000-30,000 with them. The fellow who doesn't even know what a computer is. So tables can turn within seconds. Ballu odalaite annattu, first will become last and the last will become first. You never know when things would change. Do not underestimate the power of a common man. Very, very difficult to understand the social dynamics there. He was comparing this high caste dominant regions and low caste dominant ones. Poverty is more pronounced in the high caste dominant states when compared to low caste dominant ones. In the former case, the fellow at the low end has to fight two problems. One is the ritual impurity, ritual hierarchy. The second one is the inaccessibility to the economic resources. Whereas in this case, low caste dominant ones, he is at least having a respite from such a huge ritual hierarchy. Proper statistics she tries to give, you can look at that essay to get more details there. There are huge lists. So the problem is, just have a look at this. I was trying to get a picture from there. I'm so sorry, but we will be writing properly later. There are three categories that Srinivas mentions: high caste, middle class, and low caste in different regions there. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya in the high caste. Middle is the cultivating one. Low caste is the Harijans and others. Don't bother to write. We will be writing later. We will see that in different regions, irrespective of whether they are high or low, their dominance is prevailing. For example, here there's something like Bhumihars, Jats and Reddys, Velalas, etc. These are actually considered to be the middle caste, cultivating caste. They become dominant in those regions. As somebody was asking the other day, we see that several Shudra castes are dominant. Like for example, Reddy is a Shudra caste. It looks to be unacceptable. If I call a Reddy a Shudra, he would take an offense of it, because he is a dominant caste. So it doesn't matter in which Varna you are. The fact is that you are a dominant caste. So based on different regional elements, we see that different castes are becoming dominant, and we'll have to understand this, that the caste dominance is a temporary affair. It's a temporal affair, meaning that today a caste may be dominant, tomorrow somebody else will be dominant, because every time the struggle will be going on that I would want to be there at the top. So at every point of time you would be trying to use the skills of applying Sanskritization. It is here that I would want to introduce a bit of more understanding about Sanskritization, then we will look at this concept again. This is a reiterating of what I have elsewhere said. Srinivas was using this concept of Sanskritization to explain indigenous factors of social change. What happens is Sanskritization is a process. Dominant caste is a model. Dominant caste is the one that sits at the top of the list. People are looking at this dominant caste and trying to achieve that status in the process of Sanskritization. So when he was explaining Sanskritization, I said to you earlier that initially he thought that it is the Brahmin who is dominant. He is only looking at the ritual purity. Later, when he has understood that several other combinations can come, then he thought that, okay, there can be a Kshatriya model of Sanskritization, there can be a Vaishya model of Sanskritization, there can also be a Sudra model of Sanskritization. If at all we can recall what was happening at the Toda territory, in the Toda territory, we can have a tribal model of Sanskritization also. Following what I am saying. So what they are doing is, in order to become one at the top, they are imitating what is there with the top. So if it is the Brahmin who is there at the top, you would be trying to imitate a Brahmanical way of life and the others. So if a Vaishya is there, you try to imitate a Vaishya. A Kshatriya is there, you will try to imitate a Kshatriya. These are all the processes we call Sanskritization. There is one very interesting thing that he mentions. In order to become one at the top, you will imitate whatever the top is having, in spite of whether it is right or wrong. You will not be using your rationality in imitation. You would forget the rationality. You will try to imitate whatever the top one is doing. In the process, you will adopt certain social evils also. So when I say a Brahmanical model, a dominant caste of Brahmins being imitated by the low castes or Varnas or the tribals, you would be imitating not simply the pantheon of gods. You will be imitating studying of the scriptures. You may be imitating their language, their naming process, teetotalism, vegetarianism, orthodoxy, and also along with all this, what you will be imitating is lower social status of women and evils such as dowry. A lower social status of women is a very significant one. You would adopt the child marriages, you would adopt the dowry. Child marriage, according to Srinivas, is not a low caste phenomena. It is actually a high caste phenomena. It is not a tribal phenomena. It is a mainstream phenomena. Child marriage may be the result of the insecurity. You will not be in a position to take care of your child, and hence you are getting her married at an early age. So what is happening when you are moving from a low caste status to a high one? You are trying to imbibe this child marriage practice and a dowry practice. He also gives these explanations such as long as the caste is at a lowly stage, women have a better social status. They have a choice to marry from. They have a deciding authority. But once you are moving up, it's as simple as how a wife treats a husband. If at all the husband has wronged, if it is an upper caste, she would maintain to be lip tight. She may not utter a word. She would succumb to the whole agony. But if it is a low caste, she wouldn't mind. In the broad daylight, on the road, she would thrash him with the broom, wash him properly. That's where you can see in real positive terms the power of the female in the low caste. Every time when we were trying to grade the position of the women, you remember what we had drawn in the embers picture. We were saying that in the horticultural times, the female has a higher position. And I also made a point there that we are not comparing her position vis-a-vis the male. We are comparing the status of the women with themselves across the time period. But here, we are comparing vis-a-vis the male. Many times this happens. Whenever we are imitating somebody, we don't try to rationalize, we don't try to question why they are doing what they are doing. So he was extending this to the other aspects also when it comes to the Kshatriya model. So the kind of limited vegetarianism, limited ritualism, and of course the land holding, the language, the dress pattern, the kind of rituals in marriage, etc. So rituals are the first-hand indicators of you trying to imitate the others. You are merely imitating the others. And then you claim the status. Sometimes, occasionally, the claims are accepted, sometimes they are not accepted. For example, if it is the Gond case, when the Gonds had got so much of a land which they were governing, they started calling themselves the Rajgonds, and they started changing their lifestyle. So it's a combination of both Sanskritization and detribalization. It was both a combination of economic and political riches and the ritualization of their lifestyle. So this is a very successful example where a tribe was accepted as a caste group, high caste Kshatriya group. Many times it is not really possible. You will try every possible mechanism to get an acceptance from the society. Many times those communities that wanted to challenge Brahmanical supremacy, they try to look down upon the Brahman. So much so that we have several examples where, for example, the Smiths in South India and the carpenters in South India, they tried to show their supremacy by challenging Brahmanical authority, by rejecting food from the Brahman. When you are doing this, when you are rejecting food from a Brahmin, that is the highest of the punishment for him. So it's like when you think that the whole world knows you, you are so very popular. If somebody comes and asks you, what's your name? Cheppandra, వాళ్ళకి చెప్పండి అంటే ఏం చెప్తారు? It looks to be very highly insulting. That's how Brahmanical dominance is challenged. And maybe that is also why Dr. Ambedkar was choosing this path. Reject those festivals where Brahmanical assistance is necessary, Brahmanical priesthood is necessary. So you are actually eliminating their supremacy there. So in the dominant caste, it is not every time a Brahmin, but a lot of secular elements make a dominant caste. I am not here trying to give all those examples of regional variants, but I want to show to you a good list of people who try to question. So with time, Srinivas was actually trying to expand his list of examples. He starts with Brahmin dominated, then ritual dominated, then he goes to include numbers. Suddenly numbers become important in democracy. Those regions and those populations that were actually uncounted so far, suddenly become important. People start to visit those areas which were known for the stink and impurity. You don't simply go there, you try to hold their children, kiss their children and clean their children and kind of things. And of course, The side cameras sometimes occasionally catch these events that you are washing your hands with the Dettol. I know whom I'm talking about. So suddenly the unaccounted become very, very important. Numbers become important. ఒక సినిమా వచ్చింది అప్పట్లో ఎమ్మెల్యే ధర్మరాజు అని. ఎమ్మెల్యే ధర్మరాజు, మోహన్ బాబు. కష్టం మాస్టారు, సినిమా నాలెడ్జ్ లేకపోతే ఎలాగా? I don't think any other teacher must have asked you to watch so many movies as I generally ask. I thought you'll listen to me then write, but you're busy, so I'll wait. So it's like I show anything, you'll have to write. We had a movie, Brahmanandam. Wherever God is, he'll start. Irrespective of the place, occasion. Leave his chapel and start the business. Can I talk? Ji sir.
The first part of the speech was are these works or concepts given by God?
Why are you writing without me talking about it? So you're writing, you write, then I'll explain. It's like copying the Hammurabi's writing. Then we'll decipher it. People in the region decide. It varies according to time, it varies according to place. And it all depends on the game that you play with others. So it's like a superpower status. It's like a superpower status. It's a combination of all that. That's why we have written in one of those points there, political clout. Political dominance is also one of the ways of influencing your caste status. So till a couple of years ago, that political party was not there in the state. It had come. So it naturally becomes dominant from the political side also. So politics, supremacy in politics can add strength to your party, to your caste. So you can have your people in the jobs, you can have your people getting the projects. So political game can help you a winner in the economics also. So these are some of the people who tried to criticize the way Srinivas had proposed this concept of dominant caste. If we are going back to basics, we said that an individual cannot move up and down. If at all you want to change your status, you will have to take some people along with you and move. Otherwise, you are only one small element in the prosperity. It is not a small insignificant thing that we are looking for. If at all social mobility has to happen, a group of people have to move. And how successfully that whole group can take itself up, that's where is the success of that caste group in the prosperity. You must have seen in your own friends and relatives, if one member from a low caste becomes successful, the later events actually are drawn by that individual. If that individual is trying to help the others in knowing the roots of prosperity, trying to help them out in the upward movement, then from that caste group, from that lineage, we see several of them moving forth. If at all that individual wants to share his knowledge and his success, if he takes it as a personal success and tries to disconnect himself with the rest of the group, the status of that group would remain as such. See, this is an understandable thing. So never did M.N. Srinivas say this, that the entire caste will be dominant. Dominance of a caste is not simply a village level fact. It may vary from region to region, from village to village. In one village a Kamma dominance may be there, in the other village it may be a Reddy dominance. The criticisms that we see here are a misunderstanding of the concept of dominant caste as explained by Srinivas. So these people said that for Dubey, it is not the entire caste that was dominant, but it was the individuals within particular caste that make the caste dominant. Individuals in the particular caste that make the caste dominant. So that's where I said, whenever people were criticizing, Srinivas was not taking an offense of it. Some other people said that it is not the entire caste, but a few lineages alone were dominant. Looking at those lineages, we feel that the entire caste is dominant. So within the same village, you may have good list of Thakurs, which are actually dominant. There are the relatives of them, but far off lineages who are still sulking under poverty. Just because a Brahmin, you need not have to be rich enough. Just because a Kshatriya, you need not have to be having a power. So not everybody has the same element of dominance. It may be an individual, it may be a community, it may be a lineage, or in some, the Chauhan was looking at the regions in the Western India. He was saying that it may be one single family in the entire village, because of which it looks that, okay, the caste is dominant. So it's like at the top there is only one family. Just because that family, that landlord is dominant and everybody seems to be serving him. It's not that the entire caste is dominant, it's only that family is dominant. And there is also something here, there may be factions that are deciding which is dominant. So within the same village, within the same caste, different factions may be there. Based on the martial power, you are trying to prove that I am more capable than you. I killed so many, how many did you kill? ఎవ్వరూ మిగలడానికి వీల్లేదు. కానీ ఒకడు అక్కడ దాక్కొని ఉంటాడు, వాడు వెళ్ళిపోతాడు. And then he comes back being a big man. ఏం సినిమా? Match the following. శత్రుశేషం రుణశేషం ఉండకూడదు, బట్ వాడు మిగిలిపోతాడు. Srinivas says, never it is said in my writing that the entire caste is dominant. But we can see that by criticizing Srinivas' concept, they are trying to add more vocabulary to it, strengthening the understanding of the concept of dominant caste. So dominance can percolate. Dominance can percolate from an individual, from a lineage, from different other groups. And when Ghanshyam Sa says that it is the caste associations that are dominant, see, caste associations play a major role. They may have a constructive role on the members of the caste. You can see that they may be sponsoring people for education, children for education, and several other sponsorships might be coming up, because of which there is a betterment of that community happening. This shall not be equated to casteism. If somebody is working for the welfare of their own people because they have the authority at that point of time, I don't think it is wrong. Unless otherwise, you are compromising on the quality of it. Unless otherwise, by what you are doing, you are limiting the possibility of the others. So if you are trying to bring the suffering onto the level playing field, Till then, there is nothing like a casteism there. So dominance of a caste is a reality. Which caste dominates varies from region to region. Who decides? It is the people that decide. They will not say that, okay, we accept that you are a dominant caste. It is not like that. The dominance is visible in the ways that cannot be many times explainable. I was saying that it is something like a superpower capability, making others listen to what you say. So suddenly you will find that people are obeying you, people are listening to what you are saying. People are outwardly, very explicitly respectful towards you or fearful towards you. So dominance may be a combination of a fear and a respect. When all this is happening, you see that sometimes the dominance is slipping away from certain groups and coming into the hands of the others. At the end of the day, in the contemporary times, it is the political and economic game. So we can very well say that caste is a functioning reality even in the most urban parts of the country. When you say that there are certain companies where casteism is existing, caste preferences are existing, it's an understandable thing that they want their caste to prosper. Don't shy away from giving examples because that is the reality. But don't describe your own failed interview there in the exam. That, see, I went to the interview there kind of a thing. But it is a reality. People might ask how to get rid of it. We are not trying to get rid of it. We don't want to get rid of it. Because we understand that though there are certain grey elements there, though there are certain very inhuman ways of exhibiting the caste position, one may try to reduce the annihilation mechanism. One may try to reduce the way lower castes are actually discriminated against. But you cannot totally do away with it. Not possible, not recommended also. But within the same mechanism, maybe you can try to see to it that a bit of humanism can be added. You may be less tolerant towards the lower castes, less intolerant towards the lower castes, less discriminating towards the lower one. Because suddenly if we say that, okay, do away with this system, that looks to be a very impractical kind of a thing. So maybe a step-by-step process of taking the others along with you. Because practically speaking, if at all even if we bring such kind of legislations, to what extent they will be accepted. So today we understand that dominance is a reality. Several cards are actually played in order to influence the dominance. It is not simply, there is the other side of it, which is not written in those criticisms. There are people who criticized that Srinivas was not considering non-Sanskritic, non-Hindu traditions, non-Hindu dominant elements. So in the time of Sanskritization, we will look at those criticisms also. There are some people who said that the Islamic element is not taken into account, or a non-Indian element is not taken into account when Sanskritization is described. So it can be not simply the Hindu, it can be a Christian model of imitation also. I have used one word some time back called Narmadeshwar Prasad survey in Kerala. He was trying to look at this. There can be a Christian model, there is a Christian model of imitation there, or there can be a Brahmin model, there can be upper caste Islamic model, like Ashraf models are there, Thakur models are there in Islam, or Mughal models are there in Islam, where they are almost functioning on the caste lines. So the explanation of Srinivas was from the Hindu society's perspective, but then similar explanation can be extended to know the caste hierarchies in the religions that are existing along with Hinduism in Indian subcontinent. He is not restricting his ideas to Hinduism alone. He says that they can be extended to the others as well. Because nowhere is he saying that Islamic groups or Christian groups cannot be models of imitation. Just because they are there with us, we can actually extend to them also. Look at him with a positive mindset. I don't personally recommend you to criticize M.N. Srinivas much. Even if you are criticizing, do that from the perspective of the others. That may look to be very one-sided one, but that's how you get the marks. It's like, to what extent I can criticize Mahatma Gandhi in the exam? Can I say that no, his non-violent means was not at all right, kind of a thing? That takes me to the extreme where the examiner would say that, okay, I'll say goodbye to you, kind of. Instead of that, say that maybe he could have been accommodating a little more of the other side also, kind of. Maybe a little more respect that he should have given to the people who were going in a violent way. Maybe he should have spoken something in their interest also. If that is the way of writing things, you are paying a respect to the other side leaders also. So it is how we call diplomacy. That is a small talk on dominant caste. You will be writing this in your next class on 16th. And then we will also be writing, I have a small other session to attend, so I'm stopping it here today. So have a good time. You finish writing in your booklet. I am into 35th session. We were talking about dominant caste, for which you will be referring to your class note that you are going to write. Plus, in AN02, I have a write-up given, dominant caste. Small picture is also given, some examples there. Along with this, you will be using the mail. The topic was Susan Anderson's write-up. Susan Anderson's writing, that will be somewhere 31st topic. About 29 I have already added there. That will be 31st topic. As somebody was requesting, I thought whenever I am asking you to do it from the mail documents, I will be referring to the number also. So that, have a good time.